Anthony, Gavin, I'd like to point this question at you guys. What are the roles of the utilities, regulators, and power plant owner-operators in implementing this law?
I'll start, and again, I want to thank both Gavin and Ken to be here. I think for such a far-reaching law, what Ken had said is there's not a lot of understanding of what the impact is going to be on both consumers and businesses alike. And so I think this is an important conversation. We need to be having a lot more of these with such an extensive law. Utilities' role, one, is to do part of this, inform customers of what's coming. But look, our role will be looking to see what's promulgated out of what the Climate Action Council is doing and how we enable this to come to fruition. And so for us, there's going to be looks right now at our transmission systems. We're doing a lot on the bulk system within the state, both moving electrons from upstate to downstate. And also we're going to have to get offshore wind into the state and how we're going to move that. But local distribution companies like Central Hudson will have to really build up their distribution networks. When we talked about two big sectors that this law is aiming to impact, it's going to be transportation and heating. And we're really going to have a build out of our distribution system and enable that. If you're going to electrify everything, we're going to move more intensive fuels like gasoline and oil to electrification. That's going to require quite a build out of our distribution systems. And so that's going to mean more substations and circuits that we're going to have to run. We're not ready for that today. We don't know exactly the impact, but the timing of that's going to be important because if you're looking to hit some of these goals in 2030 and 2040 and 2050, there's going to be a lot of costs and a lot of planning and studies we're going to have to do to make sure we can enable these other sectors, heating and transportation, to be electrified in the future.
I'll speak from the role of the power generators because the independent power producers, I represent over 3/4 of the electric generation in New York State. We employ about 15,000 people across the state, and we pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $1.7 billion in property taxes. I represent every fuel source in the state. So for us, for the Business Council, a lot of that, what's driving them, and I get it, is affordability, and that drives Anthony too. I'm not saying it doesn't drive me, but what does drive us at the power sector and the generator sector is reliability. Like, how practical is this from a reliability standpoint? And I think from our standpoint, we have a lot of gaping holes in this plan so far about reliability. We have the state saying one thing, the ISO, New York State Reliability Council, calling on other technologies that need to be developed. So to get to Anthony's point, to accomplish these goals, we need to build out the electricity grid 4 to 4.5 times larger than it is today. And what is that going to take? That's going to take more power. So where are we going to get that power from is an important question. And I'm really proud of the record that we have as power generators. We in the last 20 years have reduced NOx by 90%, SOx by 90%, and CO2 in 20 years by 60%. So we feel like we've led the way, and where the carbon emissions are coming is something that Ken touched on, Anthony touched on, is coming from buildings and cars and trucks and transportation. So how we tackle really the building issue and the vehicle issue is a huge issue for New York State because of the amount of driving we have to do in New York State.
And I'd just like to add to that point, and I think that's one of the misconceptions in the public. You talk about, and you see this in news coverage and some of the advocacy all the time. This is power plants and big industry, but it's not. Industrial process emissions in New York State is like 2% of all emissions. Power plants New York State was the most carbon efficient energy producing state in the nation, even before CLCPA. It's vehicles and cars. I think vehicles and transportation are 75% plus of total emissions. So to achieve the emission reductions in this law, industry is almost there already, and power generation is heading in that direction. It's office buildings, it's homes, it's multi-family homes, it's commercial space, and it's cars, trucks, the things that move us and the goods and services we rely on is where the major changes have to come. And I think most people simply don't understand that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Joe. And just one other thing that Gavin had said before, reliability. It's something that everyone takes for granted, right? You come home on a hot summer day, you turn on the AC, you jump into the pool, you don't think twice about your power being there. But if you start looking at some of the reports, what Gavin's bringing up in the Climate Action Council, what you look at the New York ISO reports, the independent system operator, there's a big concern about what Gavin asked, where are we going to get the power from? And when you look at the intermittency of these renewables and what you're going to need, there's real concern about reliability. That's something we've all taken for granted for years around here, that we're not going to have a rolling brownout, or when you want your power, you're going to have it. I think people are raising a question whether that's going to be so. If you're not careful, that could be breached, and that just can't be breached, I think, in this day and age here in this state.
I do want to continue to talk a little bit about renewable energy and that 70% renewable energy by 2030. Now, how much renewable energy, how much solar and wind do we have now, and how far do we have to go?
Yeah. So I think we were blessed in New York State with hydro. This is kind of a legacy renewable. I think we're 28% of the way there. We have to get to 70 in essentially now 7 years. But the magnitude and scope of what we have to do in the next 7 years is daunting. Let's make no mistake about it. The amount of projects that need to be approved and built and financed in that next 7 years is enormous. And I think we have a large uphill battle to get there, I think, candidly. I think there's a lot that needs to be done on both siting and financing and building out projects here in the next 7 years to come close to meeting that goal. That's my sense, and obviously Ken and Gavin have a point of view as well, but we have a long way to go, Joe, to meet this goal in 7 years.
Sure.